Our next mini message is continuing in Genesis 25, picking up in verse 7. If you didn't listen to yesterday's, highly recommend you go back and listen so that you get the context that's starting us off here in chapter 25. Now, in verse 7, it says, Abraham lived for 175 years. The man was around for a minute. And he died at a ripe old age, having lived a long and satisfying life. He breathed his last and joined his ancestors in death. His sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Machpelah near Mamre, in the field of Ephron, son of Zohar the Hittite. This was the field Abraham had purchased from the Hittites, and where he had buried his wife Sarah. After Abraham's death, God blessed his son Isaac, who settled near Ber-lahai-roi in the Negev. And there'll be a spelling test on where he went to in just a little while. So, when we look at this, a couple of very interesting things happening here. Remember in the previous video, he sent the sons of the concubines and his other wife away, blessed them, gave them, an inheritance, basically gave them a gift. Hey, here's some stuff, get you started on your way. Slide on out of here. Left Isaac in the promised land, and he received the main inheritance, and he received the blessing. Now here Abraham is passed, right? And he lived this long, satisfying life. Now Ishmael comes back. I find that to be fascinating, that Ishmael came back. I wonder that if in the interim time here between when Ishmael was pretty much, banished, along with his mother Hagar, if he had ever come back and continued to have some level of relationship with Abraham once he was an adult. I'd like to think he did, but the Bible doesn't tell us. But there's a lot of things in the lives of these men and women that we find, especially in the Old Testament, that we don't see everything. There's gaps. And so I'd like to think that Abraham and Ishmael made peace, and that even he and Isaac made peace. And him coming back for his father's funeral kind of leads you down that path, that he did come back, and he did make peace with both of them, with Isaac and with Abraham. So, I think that's a great thing. I'm really glad this is included in Scripture to kind of show us that. Now, they buried Abraham in the cave at Machpelah near Mamre. Now, as it says here, this is the same cave that Sarah is buried in. He purchased this. This was the land. This is the piece of land that he purchased in the Promised Land. It's apparently the only piece of land he actually owned in the Promised Land was this right here. And so Abraham is buried here. Isaac will be buried here. Jacob will be buried here. And long after, Joseph will be buried here as well. When Abraham passes, Isaac passes, Jacob passes, Joseph passes in Egypt, and then Moses takes his body back to the Promised Land. It'll actually be Joshua, that next generation, that'll take him into the Promised Land and bury him in that same cave. So I love that that symmetry of this family being buried here in the Promised Land. And so from this point on, Isaac is the son of blessing now. The promise is passed to him. So we'll pick up with the rest of Isaac's story tomorrow.